So this is just up your alley. Welcome everyone to the show. Welcome everyone. This is Maximo at VodPod Media. We're here at the show, kicking it off Tuesday night. Again, I am your host as always. We got to say what's up to everybody out there doing fabulous on this Tuesday night. As I mentioned, my name is Maximo. If I didn't already, I said it 3 times, but I got to make it right because I use pronouns he, him, his, and it is a pleasure, privilege to do this work. You know, earlier today I was reflecting on doing purpose-driven work, being passionate about the work that we do. I like to think that every day we get opportunities, and what we do with those opportunities, it's, you know, you got to make it happen, and sometimes you miss. It's like a free throw, right? Your shooting percentage is high sometimes, and other times you miss, but you miss 100% of the shots you never take. And so if you're watching this and you need a sign about doing purpose-driven work, about following your passions, about doing what you love, let this be it, because I'm here with another individual. I would say maybe a servant leader, maybe someone who's been around the block. You talked about doing humanitarian work, and we're going to get into a little bit of that. Sure. Public servant, county commissioner here in San Antonio, Mr. Tommy Calvert.
What an
Tommy,
honor
what's
to be.
up, brother?
Hey, man, I am so on cloud 9 just to be here with you and Guylan. This is an incredible thing that you guys are doing here.
Yeah, VodPod Media, homegrown, independent run. You know, one of the things that Guylan and I talked about was elevating Black and brown voices, our experiences. And I know you know a little bit about that background.
Yeah, it's kind of been the calling card multi-generationally with my dad. I mean, back in the day, him and Mario Salas and some of those guys, they had a mass media watch group, which really took on a lot of our mainstream media in terms of how they portrayed Blacks and browns, how they portrayed crime on the East Side. You know, you're carrying on a long legacy of an important work.
Yeah, man. And we got a worldwide audience, man. We find people that watch us overseas somehow.
Very cool.
We got people all around the continental United States that watch us out in Michigan.
Worldwide
Shout
web.
out to all the family all over the place, whether you're watching this in Arizona, Florida, much love.
Make sure y'all vote in Arizona.
So we're going to get a little bit into electoral politics, leadership. We appreciate you. If you're watching, give us a comment about where you're chiming in from. Vote wherever you're at. Yeah. Vote because, as you mentioned, Tommy, you know, our country's on the verge of dictatorship in some spaces. And why is that, man?
Well, you know, what we're watching in many ways is folks who don't want the browning of America to happen. And really, this is about respecting everybody. All sides want to be respected, but there's one side that wants to keep money and power, and it's the last throes really of white supremacy, to be perfectly honest. And they are trying to get a fascist dictatorship in the United States in order to maintain power. And so they are plucking away at democracy one institution at a time. Mussolini once said, you can pluck a chicken one feather at a time and nobody will notice. But many of us who know history are noticing that many of our freedoms are being taken away. You look at the attack on women's rights, voting rights. All of those things are part of a concerted effort. And so we have got to vote Democratic. I'm just going to say that very clearly because the Democratic Party is the only party that really is believing in democracy. Now, there are some very good Republicans who really understand the Constitution, the freedoms, and the rule of law. I'm not saying that that's not the case. But what we're watching, even with the attack on the Speaker of the House's husband,
I heard about
where
that.
there are jokes being made about an attack against I mean, really, she is the head of our legislative branch, and that is really the very first branch mentioned in the Constitution. And so this is a major attack, and to make jokes about it just because you have political issue differences is not the respect that we're going to take into the future. I have full confidence that people are going to vote the right way, and that this country, even though it feels like there's a midterm and it typically parties switch, Republicans do very well, I think the issues around abortion, around voting rights, around just economic empowerment, and even college scholarships, for example, is on the ballot right now. I mean, a lot of the Republicans are trying to take away the $10,000 or $20,000 in college relief money that Biden put forward. That will be potentially on the cutting block if Democrats aren't reelected.
You're an interesting cat, and you're well informed the issue. I mean, how did you get this? Like, again, talking about passion and purpose, and, living out, your life's goals and dreams, man. Where do you get this fire from, man? I know you talked about your dad. And
yeah, I didn't have much of a childhood. I was brought to community meetings with my father. He organized 30 neighborhood groups on the south, west, and east sides and northeast side. And so I grew up around a lot of the senior citizens who were fighting for economic development in the neighborhoods. We had banks that didn't lend. We had to get the very first banks to come in the east side were ones that, we actually took over the Bankers Association when I was like 15 years old with my dad in DC, and with 2,000 people, he led that. And I was involved in every kind of issue growing up. We were involved in the LGBT rights, we were in women's rights, economic, housing, environmental racism, crime fighting. All of those things were part of how I grew up as a kid. And so when I ran for this office, we actually looked at all the projects I've been to City Hall with, all the neighborhoods we'd gone to get. A lot of these streets paved were not paved because they were disinvested historically by the power structure in this town. And so we were able to see that I had already gotten $432 million in infrastructure, which was pretty unheard of for someone who had never served in office. And so that, along with doing kind of stretching myself in terms of international relations and wanting to be a better global citizen myself and love cultures and love people. And I specialize in global conflict, cooperation, and peace and justice studies so that I could, I guess, bring world peace or something like that. And I'm working on that. I've been very fortunate to help bring peace to Sudan, South Sudan, and get two of the world's newest countries, Burma and Sudan. I passed the Burmese Freedom and Democracy Act when I was head of the American Anti-Slavery Group, as well as the Sudan Peace Act. So it's just been, God's hand throughout my life preparing me for the challenges that we have.
And we certainly have a lot of them. Again, hats off to you for this work. I want to get more into this, and we're going to jump around because we're just having a free-flowing conversation. Yep. There's a lot of things happening right now. I mean, this week in Texas is the last week of early vote.
Yeah, Friday is the last day to vote early. Texas probably that way in a lot of states.
So many of our viewers are watching from Texas. If anybody right now is considering to sit this one out, what are you going to tell those people?
This is the most important midterm in the history of America because literally our freedom and democracy is on the ballot. Right now in Texas, they tried to strip away and shave off votes by making it more difficult for people to vote by mail. In this very place where we sit right now, 38% of the senior mail ballots in March were rejected, and they had to be fixed. And we worry about that happening in November as well. So help your seniors to put their social security number and their driver's license number on their mail ballot so that it will get counted. But this is it's a biblical spiritual thing, right? So you look at Pharaoh in the Bible, in the book of Exodus, he had noticed that the Israelites were having more babies than the Egyptians. And so he told all the midwives, go kill all the Israelite baby boys so we can shave off the Israelites' numbers and maintain power for a little longer and monetary power. It's the same thing now. You see the browning of Texas. As soon as the demographics changed, where more Hispanics were a larger portion of the population, they decided to make voting harder. They decided to cut public school funding. All of that was with intent. But it is extremely short-sighted because we are one race, the human race. We are not black, white, or brown. We are all human beings who are brothers and sisters. And we have to try to get the respect to empower those that fear that they're somehow going to be forced away from economic opportunity just because you have more black and brown people getting educated, becoming entrepreneurs. We're not looking to take anything away from anybody. We're just looking to have our fair share of the American dream. Yeah,
opportunities, and that's really interesting as well because, I feel like people like us, we're nice guys and stuff, but we have to call out what is really real, right? There's a true dark history of racism in this country. Some people would rather ignore all of that. Some people would rather, choose to say that no aspects of that are real anymore. It's all a myth, but, when you think about true love and having love for one another, we have friends and family that are all colors, hues, races, right? Because it's all family and it's all love at the end, right? At the end of the day, man, we can all break bread together. We can all love each other. I came up playing sports. Majority of my best friends were black and white, and all in between, right? Vietnamese, Mexican folks who came up playing sports, soccer, whatever it was.
Where'd you go to school?
I'm from Michigan, bro.
Okay, Michigan,
so I'm from Michigan, and so my dad's originally from San Antonio. My mom's from the Valley, but we came back here a couple of years ago. My family's historically from the west side of town, General McMullen, Commerce area, and we traveled around the country to get a piece of that American dream as well. And if anybody's questioning this about, because you mentioned the terms white supremacy earlier, yes, we talk about white supremacy on the show. We hope it doesn't offend anyone, but the bottom line,
a white supremacist, you shouldn't be.
Exactly, right? I mean,
we should have everyone be equal, period.
Absolutely.
No race is above anybody. Period.
Absolutely, but I think that when you say the terms white supremacy, some people start to get.
It needs to be said.
Some people start to get standoffish.
Well, there are people in politics who are working really damn hard to promote white supremacy in policy and in contracting and in all kinds of other ways.
Absolutely. Voting. So we're jumping around because as you're talking, you got my brain synapses just firing here.
All right.
You mentioned forces that were at work to, throw away votes, to purge people on the rolls, right?
Yep.
Let's talk about the attack on the White House that happened January 6th. Was that this year? Or was it about a year and a half ago?
2021, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because
at the Capitol,
that happened real time on television for people to see. That some
I couldn't
people
understand why there wasn't anybody arresting anybody. I didn't understand.
So what are your thoughts on that, man? Because that was a true attempt to say, we're throwing all this, processes that we have to the side, and we're going to storm the White House, and we're going to take back our house, and it's, we're going to do, who knows what the plan was, but there are still people that are being investigated for whatever reason, and, committees, doing research on this sort of stuff. What were your thoughts on that?
As someone who really has risked his life to fight for freedom, I was horrified, and yet I felt that God gave us a lot of grace because we were inches away from dictatorship. We were inches away from a coup. We were inches away from death in the streets and Americans fighting each other. We were inches away from kind of an Argentinian far right, far left kind of swing, and that's not where America wants to be. Part of the beauty of America is, even though it's frustrating at times for those of us who may be very progressive, that we kind of are moderate, incremental change. It does have a good civic purpose in keeping people kind of from overreacting, because in other countries what happens is the far right and the far left, they just blow each other away. They just slaughter each other in politics, and sometimes quite literally between elections. And that's why the peaceful transition of power is so important to maintain. And why I was quite upset, disturbed. I'm a true patriot. I love this country. And I think that the folks who have had misinformation, that is one of the most vile things about the American democracy that's happening, is that people are manipulating data, information, and people aren't able to discern when they're given bad information. And that's a big challenge that we're going to have to face going forward, and really empower and educate people. I always say, forget about make America great again. How about make America read again? We got to get people reading the Constitution, understanding how to get beneath the surface of bad information.
Yeah. That's another challenge as well. But again, every time I feel like our people level up to getting hip to the game and the tricks and the things that have stopped us from things like voting, right? There's another trick, man. And it's interesting how that works. But so let's go back a little bit. You've talked about, having that pedigree, being bred, so to speak, through your father, learning, going to these meetings as a child. When did you know you wanted to run for office?
Well, I think growing up, I kind of figured that I would be involved in political service at some point. I thought that I would probably run for state rep first. Being commissioner was not on my plan, but the best things I've ever done in my life were not on my plan, but now I realize it was all part of God's plan. So my first political office technically was serving as a Democratic Party precinct chair, one of the institutions that the fascists in Texas have have tried to destroy. So precinct chairs, if there's a vacancy in an office, let's say like when Commissioner Elizondo passed away a few years ago, the precinct chairs chose depending on when someone leaves the office. So let's just take Commissioner DeBerry, for example. She left her office before the term, so the Republican precinct chairs made an appointment about who their nominee would be. It's a governmental entity, but yet we have people in the local party who purged many Hispanics and blacks from the precinct chair ranks and actually put in folks with Republican voting history to become precinct chairs. They were trying to infiltrate our party and get rid of many of the diehard Democrats within the party. So that was my first office. I ran for Congress actually as an independent, and that was in 2006 in a special election mandated by the Supreme Court. I lost handily, but I raised, it was about a 3-month race. I was 25, 26. We raised $100,000 in 3 months or 2.5 months. And the Austin American Statesman wrote, Tommy Calvert is the best person not elected to Congress because they moderated my debates. And I was really done with politics. I had really lent myself a lot of money, like $30,000 at 25, 26 was a lot of money for me. And I was used to winning things on merit, right? And politics is not always about the most meritorious person winning. And so I was really not going to run for office. And Commissioner Atkinson, who Guylan here, owner of the studio here, I'm just so proud of him, by the way, he decided to run for county judge against now Judge Wolf. And nobody knew he was going to do that, so the seat became open, and I was trying to find someone to run. And people were saying, you should run, but I had a $9 million television show on MSNBC called Slave Hunter, and I was getting ready to go to New York, have my autobiography written by Simon & Schuster, and long and short of it is, we had a lawsuit filed against the show. It was bogus, didn't amount to anything, never went anywhere. And I had to explain to the senior vice presidents of NBC News that this was bogus and not going to amount to anything. Well, I was at my radio station. At the filing deadline was like December 9th. We were going to be airing that show December 1st. And I was at the radio station, and people are like, you got to run. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And so I'm at the radio station at 8, and I pray, and I say, God, if you want me to run for this position, you're going to have to move the filming of the show past the March Democratic primary. Well, at 1 o'clock, my assistant Dawn in New York called and said, well, congratulations, Tommy. The executives have decided to resume the airing of the show. I go, when? She goes, well, they're not exactly sure, sometime past March. And I got goosebumps. I looked up and said, God, I didn't want you to tell me that. And that's when I decided to run. So my whole pact is protect God's children. And if I ever stop doing that, then I said, God, take me out of office. But as long as I'm protecting his children, I think we'll be okay in service.
So this is, yeah, and here's the thing, we've talked about this, we've danced around the subject with other guests, and I know, I mean, there's a difference between leadership and elected officials, people that have their hearts and minds in the right places, that care about people. I tell people all the time, I'm not into politics. I don't think a lot of people really are, but I am into people. It's serving those people, because you mentioned, there are people that suffer from injustices, and there's all sorts of them happening all around the country right now, right? When we talk about just this year, let's talk about COVID hasn't gone anywhere. Let's talk about the economy and inflation, right? Yeah. Gas prices. One of the things in San Antonio that we need to think about is infrastructure, folks moving into town, right? Traffic, congestion, right? One of the other things is climate change. The grass is yellow, man. Like, we need some rain, right? Pray to God we get some rain, right? I mean, these are just some minor things. No, I mean, I shouldn't say minor things, but these are things that the majority of our people, though, are probably just looking to get by. They're looking to get food on the table. They're looking to get the kids to and from school, homework done, bath time. And it's hard for them to really get involved on these issues, right? That's why we have such a low voter turnout in the majority of the spaces, with the other barriers that have been put into place to take away people's right to vote.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Well, some of it is politicians' fault too, because a lot of elected officials aren't delivering for people in the ways that they should be. And part of the big reason for that is the influence of money. Big money special interests drive politics. So you may have Tommy Calvert who's pushing and pushing and pushing, but I got other colleagues I got to work with that may have a different agenda than the people's agenda. And so, the influence of big money special interests is really crowding out the very important things. And they like that people get discouraged and say it doesn't matter who you vote for, which it does, that your vote doesn't count, which it does. They want you to do that because the less people that have eyes on your democracy, that participate in your democracy, the more the powerful money special interests can take over and fill your space. And we outnumber, the people outnumber the powerful. But we have to make our voices heard through voting and through participating and raising hell and advocating for the needs of communities. So I hope in the new year, as we get a new county judge, as we have a new commissioner's court, we'll be able to take care of a lot more things. I see housing prices being high and a hard thing for people to afford a place to live. We need to be responsive to that. Much more than we have. Things like down payment assistance and moving affordable housing to the front of the line of permitting, really incentivizing affordable housing that your workforce can afford and tying your job to home ownership. So that's often what they do in many other countries. If you're a policeman or a teacher or whatever manufacturing job you may have, you can pretty much get a home. And so we need to develop programs like that. Maybe a program, let's say we want to create more longevity of the sheriff's officers, and we help them with down payment assistance. If you work for us for 5 years, we'll help you with the down payment on your home. Things like that will help. When 48% or 46% of the homes in Bexar County are bought by a corporation, it's forcing a lot of families not to be able to afford to compete against them. And we're going to have to do something about that. That's things that happen at the state level. And, people think it doesn't matter, which part, there will be a party, and it's the Democratic Party, who would pass legislation against what I call the vulture capitalists, who are all too happy to swoop people's homes when they can't afford the higher property taxes, or they're falling on hard times because of cost of inflation and things like that. So we need to be responsive to the high cost of groceries. We built an urban farm right down the street on Sherman, close to this building, where we gave away 25,000 pounds of food to families in need during the pandemic and beyond. And we're going to continue to develop that urban farm. And let's help people not only with the cost of groceries, but let's also help them use food as medicine to make them healthier so that they have better healthcare outcomes. And we'll be following that.
Yeah, and you're speaking on so many good items. You're into getting things done. I've read your bio list of accomplishments. Very impressive, by the way. You talked about the urban farm. How hard is this to get stuff done?
Oh, well.
Because, that's a topic. And again, we talk about our people, and not to go back to the apathy, because I think it's not just apathy, right? But many people say, well, what's my vote going for? Nothing changes.
Well, I am the Jackie Robinson of Commissioner's Court. And what I mean by that, not that I'm as great as he is at black at anything, of my kind of leadership that can bring together black, white, and brown and yellow and everybody else to be the leadership. So, many times you are forgotten in the conversations in media and overlooked and all those kinds of things. There are games on Commissioner's Court, which will come in a couple of years. People will be amazed at who some of the heroes they thought were really villains, working against the interests of
come on, man.
Angels and people power. They have helped me push through the people's agenda.
He came on, and man, your dad. Again, for folks that don't know him, as guys on the call, it was all men. It was an all men's call, black and brown.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Yeah.
He went around the. He was like, and Maximo's well dressed tonight, ready to go, and I wanted to mention that because I put into the community, because although we may not always get it done, Arrow Metal, they said, look, much love to you all. We adore it of housing. Yep. We got Shelly Chance chiming in, says reasons, listen, there's people everywhere, whether it's buying a house, whether it's being healthy, a long list. One of the other items that I thought was in our communities are with things like policing, things like military.
I just want the listener, the viewer who is concerned about build more apartments where you're only paying 30% of your income. But back to your other question was around what again?
State it, right? And how you state it frames up to a lot of people if they're walks of life, but your record of getting things done.
With a lot of dragging of feet of staff in the various departments. But find harmony and balance with our Creator, with each other. We have to get to a point of respect. And we have to get to a point of relevant profiling and some harassment. The defund, you probably heard my reforms that were behind a lot of them safe in fighting crime and holding law enforcement to a high place for the release of the video. I'm still getting opposite. But we also created the first civilian review board for thing to do because they were way behind. Because one of my former men and I saw that the sheriff's department officers were working in a poor, raise their wages in the 7 years I've been in office. There be measures taken to discipline, and I paid for the expungement of those two young ladies who I didn't want to have their college records or their ability to be in nursing school or law school affected by what I thought was a pretty unjust arrest. So I think I've been very fair. And I hope that's what people come to know. I when I see injustice, I'm going to speak up.
Yeah.
That's what Calverts do. Like it's like a switch in us. We just can't help it. We are the guys who gets titanium spines when nobody else will. Speak up on it. But we're Jedis, so we have to do it with the right timing.
Yeah, because that's the thing too. When you're fighting that fight, man, you can get exhausted. Right? There's some level of exhaustion, right? I mean, there's got to be
my mama still works every day till midnight or 1. So we don't know. We're workhorses. Dad's up at 4 a.m. I'm up all the time. I'm both ends of the stick. So it's all good. We just we're led by the joy of serving.
A greater calling.
Yeah, I mean it's we don't wear it on our sleeves, but it is our faith that we treat and work the way we do. And so that's our fuel.
You are a hard worker. I've seen you in a lot of different areas getting things done. You're always doing stuff on the east side. I've seen you in the gym.
And the southeast, the northeast, and the
You're doing
downtown.
it all over. It seems like the events I've seen are just on the east side, but you are doing work all over. You are all over.
I just gave away 500 books to children in St. Hedwig in the rural part, in the highly Republican part, voted heavily in my first election against me by probably about 45%. That won't be the case when I run again for re-election. I helped get the old Southeast Baptist Hospital revitalized by Methodists. That was one of my first promises to the people, to make sure that it didn't become an eyesore. And I'm very proud of the $10 million Bishop Ernest Dixon clinic we got there. I helped save Randolph Air Force Base, our 6th largest employer, from closure in my first year in office. I've got 2 hospitals that we're building. I worked 4 years to create a new hospital at Texas A&M and 7 years to do the one we bought 41 acres at Retama Park. Both of those hospitals are $500 million. So yeah, I like to get things done, but I do it all over. The Thompson Hotel, the arts residence, I helped raise $50 million in Vietnam and all over the world to bring investment to the local owners of that. I'm working on a new river walk downtown called The Link. It'll be the hippest area of downtown. It'll connect the San Antonio River to San Pedro Creek. So, we passed the very first housing bond. I created that with Mayor Taylor. Now Mayor Nierenberg expanded it into the ideas that I originally had. And I'm just pressing forward, cleaning up neighborhoods like Camelot with the trash, doing a lot to fix park systems from Brooks City Base. We did the new linear park there, the Hot Wells Park, and we're going to build a couple more parks in the southeast side. So I show the love at all areas of my precinct.
Yeah, and I understand, we appreciate with all this busyness, your time to come in here and do the show. We understand you just came from block walking.
Well, not just a second, but I was out. I was out at the pole before at Lions Field, and we were doing some work out there. But we've been all over, yeah.
So, what's the message that Tommy Calvert is saying to the people right now? If he comes to your door, if he's at your polling station, what's the message? Because you're up for re-election.
Well, it depends on where we're at, right? So, Northeast issues are different than the East Side, than downtown, than the Southeast, than the Far East. So. Really, the message is, what are your top issues or concerns? I'm not going to come to you and say I'm the best thing since sliced bread. I want to hear what's going on with your family, your neighborhood, what you think about your state and country, and I'm going to listen. And I'm going to ask you, what are your top 3 issues? And then we're going to talk about those issues. So for me, it's very important not to homogenize a message. It's important that I, one, listen, because the success that I had in getting more things done than I think any commissioner's ever gotten done in this precinct is not because of me. It's because the people gave me the answers, because the people are the experts in their neighborhood with the issues that they're facing. So I just listen, write down those issues, and then I saved those things and went to work on them, both while I was block walking in the field and later after I got reelected. So those issues change. We're investing a lot in mental health because we see young people having a lot of mental health issues, people having a lot of mental health issues. And so we're investing in beds for substance abuse. We're investing in mobile care for our school districts, with something like $20 million that we put so that our school districts, that they don't have to pay for additional mental health care.
Yeah, and listen, man, you touching on a lot of good items. Our show's blowing up right now. We got a ton of people watching the show, commenting live, liking.
We're speaking to them, I guess.
Make sure you share this post, folks.
Absolutely.
We only got a couple minutes left on the show. Now, listen, the show always goes by very quickly. So we're trying to be quick, kind of here. You know how it is with the show when you're on TV, radio. You know, you got a lot of things you want to communicate. Right. Very little time. You know. Again, so many issues to talk about. You know, one of the other issues I think that was important that, you know, you mentioned is just overall health. How do our people get healthy? You know, we're big fans of health and wellness here. A lot of our audience and viewers respond to healthy living, wellness, right? What we eat, what we consume, how we rest, if we can rest to relax from stress that have going on, as well as how we're exercising, how we're moving around. Some of our people don't have, you know, the autonomy or the freedom or, you know, the chance to get out there and do some of that stuff, man. What can we do for these folks?
Well, I think food is medicine. I think 80% of our health care outcomes are dependent upon what we put in our bodies. And so, you know, I'm trying to promote as much as possible a more organic, less chemical driven, more healthy, fresh fruits and vegetables. I also think our environment's important. Our air that we breathe, the water that we drink is really important. But then, of course, it's got to be medical care close to you. And so I've done things like put clinics close, like the Hilliard Clinic right up by the McDonald's by 35. The Urban Farm is behind Wheatley Middle School. I renovated the McCreeless University Health System. We've got the 2 new hospitals we just spoke about. A new urgent care clinic is coming to the neighborhood I was born in Eastwood Village, right at 10 and Houston Street, where the Child Safe building is coming. I'm very proud that we worked on that. But, you know, all of those things work together along with social determinants of health, right? So if you are homeless, if you're struggling to make ends meet, the stress level becomes high. So trying to attune to people's stresses, they're easing of financial burdens as much as possible to make the market more fair, because there is a lot of companies that are exploiting the current market conditions. And I think we're going to start cracking down a lot more on these corporations that are making record profits and passing it off as inflation, but it's really greed. And I think that's why the president has introduced potentially a windfall tax for the energy companies, which really are charging more for energy than they need to be. I think you're going to see that in the housing market as well. I think we're going to see that in some of the supply chain. Everything's being blamed on the supply chain, but it's not always really that. In any event, there's a lot of work to be done.
A lot of work to be done. And again, you know, you're a very good communicator. You're obviously well-liked. You've been elected. We got a ton of people watching our show. I mean, we got people that have never watched the show like chiming in because they love Tommy Calvert.
Oh, thank you all.
What are your future plans, man? I mean, is there a chance that we could have a Governor Calvert?
I got to win. I got to win
Senator
on Tuesday.
Calvert.
I got to win on Tuesday, so please go and vote, because it's not. I got an opponent on the ballot.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, the best things in my life were not on my plan. And so I have stopped trying to plan it out. Like I said, I thought I'd be a state rep first. I didn't think I would grow up to free slaves for a living, right? I mean, that wasn't on my plan. I didn't think I'd start a radio station. But those things were in God's plan, and now I see his work in my life. And so where I'm needed is where I'll go. I have no idea where that will be in the years ahead. But, you know, I'm a very competitive person, and I think that I have proven myself as an effective leader. And I think I would do a better job at a lot of positions than a lot of the folks that are in these positions now.
That's well said. And that's what I'm talking about. You're well spoken, you're eloquent, you have a lot of, different interests. You mentioned, radio, writing a book, freeing slaves, right? I mean, this is a broad palette. Tell us about some of your other interests, man. What do you like to do for fun?
Well, I love music. As many people know, I used to DJ, and so I love that. Love working out. I would do it twice a day if I had the time, but it's kind of like you got to do the people's business first. I actually love community service as kind of a thing to take my own needs and put myself last and really see where people are. Love to travel. I like to do international travel, see some of the best ideas around the world, bring them back to San Antonio. I'm really proud to try to raise us up as a world-class city by really seeing more world-class cities. And like the Link, for example, part of the vision behind that new river walk that'll connect the San Antonio River to San Pedro Creek is to have some of the fountains like you have in Dubai and Las Vegas that are dancing with lights and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And amphitheaters with the Dream Hotel, the largest project in the history of downtown, $450 million. So, I like to hang out with friends, have a good time. So, yeah.
So you mentioned DJing. We've got a lot of radio lovers, music lovers. Yeah. Who are some of your best, musical influences?
Well, I'm an Earth, Wind, and Fire guy, right? So like I'm an old school head, really, in the R&B. That's my thing. Some hip hop, but more of an R&B guy.
Yeah. So you also wearing a shirt from the Freeman Coliseum? Was that on purpose?
No.
I didn't know if you maybe were stumping for him out here. Or if you had.
No. I mean, it's one of the buildings that the county has that we run, and it was just a free shirt that I put on.
Okay, I didn't know if it was, hey, a nod to everybody down there, or maybe the Spurs, right next door.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things we're trying to do to keep the Spurs here in San Antonio. We don't want them to go to Austin, obviously, and so we're working on that behind the scenes as well. Yeah.
San Antonio has an XFL team coming to town.
Yeah, that's exciting to see.
Yeah.
It's a big football city. It's a big football state. And, I think the success of UTSA is really showing, just how we rally around. I mean, we do it all the time, Friday Night Football, but, and of course, rabid Cowboy fans. I think it's probably the second biggest Cowboy city in the United States behind Dallas. But it would be nice to continue to see more professional sports. But I think the lack of professional sports in this city is really because our corporate base is small, because we've kind of kept the same families and companies enriched for a very long time. And I think the more that we democratize commerce and help other businesses not just do the startup thing, we do, frankly, more of that than we really need to. What we need to focus on is accelerating businesses. Mm-hmm. We need to take a $100,000 business to $1 million business, and a $1 million business to a $10 million business, and a $10 million business to a $100 million business, and help our local businesses export to different markets, countries, and that's what we need to be focused on here.
Yeah.
And that will sell us the box seats. That is the reason we don't have another professional sports team, is because they say our corporate base isn't big enough. Well, it's not big enough because we've allowed monopolies of certain big money campaign contributors and things like that to dominate and crowd out meritorious small business people.
Yeah. It's funny, man. Capitalism's got a grip on this country, and it's one of those things. I mean, you can't live without it. Mm-hmm. So you got to have it. Yeah. And I find a lot of our people, man, they break their backs to try to get a piece of that pie. Especially
or break their spirits and their souls.
This country will work you to death, man.
Yeah. People are working really, really hard to try to make ends meet, and that's what we've got to do is make this country a lot more fair in terms of, if you're working full time, you're giving your all. You ought to be able to have that American dream and not have a lot of debt hanging over you or a lot of obligations. So we've got to get the economy in balance. Capitalism is by far the best system. It's cronyism that tends to mess up the capitalism, but cronyism can mess up socialism as well. Mm-hmm. And so I think those are the fascist forces and the communist forces are going to be alluring forces in politics going forward. Mm-hmm. I think one of my spiritual missions in political service is to spread light on the fact that neither one of those is where we need to go. We've got to find the balance to maintain freedom and choice for folks, and not have a command and control, because both of those systems can go into command and control, where the top tells who is selected as the winner, and that's a problem. So we're going to have to work on that.
Man, a lot of issues, but there's hope.
There is.
There's always hope, right?
Yeah. The human spirit. We're all working through it. All of us on this earth are working through these conflicts, and it's all healthy, and we just have to respect each other in the conversation.
It's interesting you say that, because believe it or not, I don't know if you knew this, today's my birthday.
Happy birthday! I didn't know that.
You know, I didn't like sharing it. I didn't want to.
How old are you today?
I'm 39 years old.
39.
And
the last year of the 30s.
That's right.
All right.
And I'm feeling every bit of 39,
Oh,
man.
come on,
My lower
come
back,
on.
man. My gosh. Injuries. I got some mileage on my body.
Híjole. All right.
Anyway, the point is that, you know, I came up with a lot of men, a lot of young men that I've stayed in touch with, homies, friends, brothers, family, and we have to be patient with one another. A lot of our young men, a lot of our boys, a lot of men of color have been brainwashed, have been programmed to believe that they had to be these big, tough, macho men, these machismo guys in black and brown communities where you had to stick your chest up, you had to stand up for yourself, you had to be that top dog on the block or else you were nothing. And I find many of our people are slowly unlearning some of that stuff.
Yes,
it happens on their own time.
Sure.
It sometimes happens on their own time,
Seeing
but
that work. Yeah.
but we have to be patient with these brothers, you know, guys that have got it wrong at every corner, but then all of a sudden something clicked, and you know what? They said, I was wrong. I was wrong. And, you know, I've been around a lot of our brothers in these spaces, and I want to let them know that, you know, no matter where you at, man, we've got to support one another. And so if you're watching this, if you need support of some kind, if it ain't me, it's somebody else, that you can find someone to support you. You know, I like to believe in compadres over competition. You know, although I'm a competitive person as well, you know, it's about helping your fellow brother, lifting them up, you know, not pushing people down, which is easy to do. It's easy to do, man. And so, you know, I don't know if you have any closing words for us, Tommy. We're in the last 5 minutes of our show. I like to spread a little bit of wisdom every now and then, but we're at a critical crossroads in regards to leadership in this country and with regards to where this country could go. You know, I know many of people that are very spirited and have been watching the race for governor in the state of Texas. It's one of those hot button races that everyone has their eyes on, because Beto has run and run and run again, and here he is. And so he's a guy that a lot of people like, but he can't seem to get over the hump on very competitive races, and he's in a dogfight right now.
Well, you know, the only poll that matters is the one on Election Day, and everybody's vote matters. And a lot of the polls Republicans, there was a new report that came out yesterday, a lot of the polls Republicans have put out, the methodology in those polls and how they're overweighing Republicans in those polls. Democrats are going to do well. And it is the young people, it is some of the unlikely voters that are turning out that are going to win this election or elections for Democrats around the country. We're fortunate to have Beto sacrifice his family. You gave a very prophetic word just a moment ago, and everything you said about, you know, the machismo and the waking up and the more conscientious movement. It's a very good word to almost end the show on. But we're fortunate to have Beto. He is a good man. And absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And there's one party that's been in power too long in the state of Texas, the state level, and the cronyism has become really ugly. And part of the failure of DPS is that you were promoted in large part in that organization because of your fealty to Governor Abbott. I mean, I remember I was watching Fox News, and I saw a DPS officer in his uniform lambasting the president. And I thought to myself, they have free reign in a publicly paid taxpayer organization to lambast the president on a news network. That's something very, very wrong. And so that's happened to Putin and his army as well. Putin is not seeing the results in his military because he promoted people through corruption and cronyism. And so, you know, we really have to steer clear of that. And it's time for those state offices to change. And the only way it's going to happen is if you get out there and vote.
And that's the
Going
thing.
back to the thing.
So I also, just as another note, we took a bus today of 12 people to go early vote. We showed up at the
That's
polls
amazing. Wow,
right here
thank
on
you.
Commerce.
Nice.
And I told everybody before we left, I said, at the very least, you are telling people that we're here to participate in the process, whether it's through a disruptive vote, whether it's a participatory vote, but it's to say that we're here and we're going to get involved. Because many folks want us to roll over and to say, let's get confused with all this stuff. And let me tell you, there was a lot of judges on the ballot. And many people that I know were looking at a voter's guide and trying to figure out the stances without, exactly. But, you know, this is work that's necessary work. So if you're watching this right now, folks, know that we need to get you out at the polls. We need to get you involved. You need to serve on boards. You need to hold people accountable. You know, accountability is, again, a part of this, because the two biggest people I have that hold me accountable are in this room right here. And I have them here today, and I'm always with them. I'm always listening to them, because that's how we get better. And I mentioned the note on men, because you got a lot of things going for yourself. You got a lot of things you got that are together. I know a lot of our other brothers that have that potential that haven't realized it just yet. So we bring you on this show. We have you here to inspire some of those people, man, because you're doing great work.
Thank you.
We appreciate you, man, for continuing, because it's a sacrifice to be in these roles. And, you know, all of the good things, man. And it's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me on your birthday. What an incredible honor. Let me just say in closing that the accountability is also on our democracy, and that is in the hands of each and every citizen. Some people think the president is the most powerful person. It's every country has freedom. Never take it for granted, because America is very close to dictatorship. I assure you of that. Many of us are fighting behind the scenes in ways that will come out later in other books, but we are going to be okay, because I believe that people are going to vote, and they're going to vote to keep this country free.
So there you have it, folks. Last words from Tommy Calvert. If you don't know him, look him up. If you got a chance to vote for him, go ahead. And they snuck a birthday cake in here. They snuck a birthday cake in here for me. The cameras are melting, but you don't have to see all that. So thank you so much. Hey, thank you so much. And I told people too, I told people as well that there's no other place I'd rather be than doing purpose-driven work here with some of the closest people I know. Some of the people that I love that bring this work to the table. We do this work for our peoples whose houses are on fire. We do this for all of the people that we love. So our children, thank you so much for watching the show, folks. This is our show. Thank you so much. I got to say love to all these people that I love so much.
Very nice.
And so thank you for watching this evening. And we're going to blow the candles out and have a cake.
Blow the one candle.
Yeah. Make a wish. Make a wish.
What are you going to do?
It said happy birthday.
It did say happy birthday.
Past tense. I
Yeah.
did way too early.
It's in a different language.
That's all good. It's all good.
Different language.
Yeah, hey, that's it. This is we got a fork and knife. I mean, what do we got here? This
Cut
cake
the
looks
cake.
good. So I actually don't even like cake,
Okay.
but I'm gonna have a piece of this
There
cake.
you
This
go.
cake,
It's
this cake
birthday.
looks pretty good.
Wow.
Everybody needs to get
Great
out and
fun.
vote.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to get out and vote, man.
Yeah, early voting ends Friday. 51 locations. On election day, you can vote at any location. You don't have to.
And that's here in Bexar County.
302.
Come about voting in any location.
Well, I changed the voting machine so that we would have a paper ballot trail and that you'd be able to vote at any location. So that's part of the little reforms we're doing when you're not looking.
That's the thing. Tommy, you're involved in all of this stuff behind the scenes, in front of the scenes. Again, we appreciate you. Again, folks, it's been a pleasure here tonight. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to be back with you this weekend for another special election show on Sunday. Tune in, VodPod Media, like, share, comment, subscribe. And to all the people all everywhere, look, we love you, and let's keep growing, keep developing, keep holding each other accountable. Thank you so much, Guyland, Destiny, and that's our show. Have a great evening, folks. Ba-boom.
Damn candle.
It's all good. The candles look good.